my name is Jianfei. Today I will do a lightning talk presentation for Istio Security Analyzer. So let's go take a look at what's the problem statement. The Istio Security Analyzer is a tool that's trying to give you a report of your Istio deployment's security aspect. If you are familiar with Istio documentation, there is a page called Istio Security Best Practice. So this documentation lists all the configuration patterns you can follow to achieve a better security posture and some best practice of your security control plane deployment, so on and so forth. Let me give you an example. In the authorization policy, you can use allow and deny. You can also use positive match and deny match, but you should really try to use allow with positive match and deny with negative match. That is because if there is some bugs in the data plane envoy proxy, the worst case of that will be a reject legitimate request rather than bypass a not allowed request, which is considered a security vulnerabilities. There are all other kinds of checks, something like that. For example, you should configure a gateway Kubernetes RBAC so that not everyone can expose your internal service to the public internet. So this documentation is great, but it is written in human readable text, is a knowledge, and it still has some learning curve or some requirements on the users to understand what those things are about. The security analyzer tool, our tool, actually trying to automate all this knowledge. You just run it. This tool will do the check for you. It automates and use the knowledge programmatically to check your configuration patterns, also your Istio control plane deployments to see whether that satisfy all those best practice patterns. If not, then give some report and warnings and how to fix them. So that is the big part, the configuration patterns and the control plane deployment. There's another very important aspect is about the vulnerabilities. Every once in a while, Istio may release another release to address some CVE reportings. And for each announcement, the CVE will list the Istio release range that is affected by that CVE. But from a user perspective, what I'm really interested in is that I tell you my version of the Istio, which could be 1.12.1, and what are the list of the CVEs that may potentially be affected, right? That's a different way of asking these questions, but that is more directly relevant to the end users. So Istio Security Analyzer also try to figure that out for you. So that is what this problem we are trying to solve. And let's take a quick look of how we solve it. When the tool runs, it uses the Kubernetes configuration on your local machine, trying to authenticate and reach out to the Kubernetes cluster and find out your Istio deployment, the version, and what's the image you are using, whether that is a distro list image or not. And after figure out the version of the control plane, it can then use a prepared populated CVE list and to calculate the CVEs that you are affected, and then give that report to the end user. Last but not least, the configuration and scanning part. We, just as mentioned, there are all kinds of configuration pattern suggestions from the Istio. Authorization policy, destination rule, gateway, so on and so forth. We implement all those things and does the check for you. All right, so a very natural question to this tool might be why you are not doing this in the Istio Cuddle Analyzer, which is a native available in the Istio official tooling, right? That's a very good question. The answer for that is 2 points. First, we think that security is something everyone cares about. You cannot, that's also main points for the Istio itself. We think that by the security, all those features were focused on the security is worth enough to be refactored out and use as a standalone tool, so that your security admin can use this to check against some your Istio deployments. And another aspect is that we will also explore and learn. We are now still at a very early stage, but we definitely are welcome to hear what are the common use case, what are the gaps you are thinking in the problem space we are trying to solve, so that making the standalone tool allow us to iterate on this and apply some of the feedback we got, and to deliver and polish this tool to meet the needs better. Okay, having said all those, now is the time to try a demo. First, this tool itself is available at TetraLabs/Istio Security Analyzer, and the prerequisite for this is very simple. You just have a Istio installed and run it. That's all. After that, it will give you the report. And I'll just run the tool. The tool reaches out to Kubernetes cluster, do some scanning, and quickly returns. As you can see, first, it tells you the control plane version. That's 112.1. And it also realizes that you are not using distro image, and that is a warning. And you can do distro Istio install for better security, because of reducing the attacking surface. And the next section is about CVE report. This version actually have 4 CVEs that affected. Each of them have the entry, the score, and the URL link. That's if you are interested, you can go and take a look of the relevant information on the website. Okay, and last, you can see the config warnings that for example, the gateway, the default booking info gateway using a host as wildcard, which is very broad. Instead, you should consider using more specific ones like full.example.com, so that the scope of the gateway handling traffic is more narrowed down. Also, there is no Kubernetes RBAC to configure who can create Istio gateway. And let's apply more configuration to see how the tool will be giving different reports. There's a few configuration we just applied. You can see the authorization policy with allow negative, which is wrong because we should use allow with positive match. Also, destination root does not have the TLS verification in this configuration. We call it TLS bad. But the good thing is that we do create the cluster role and the cluster role binding that specify who can create the gateway resource, Istio. So now let's run the tool again, right? You can see this time the first part doesn't change because the deployment of the control plane is still the same, but the config warnings now is a bit different. The gateway still are there, but the fail to find cluster role and cluster role bindings for gateway creation, that warning is gone, right? Because we just applied some cluster role and cluster role binding. However, the TLS destination rule, this doesn't have a verification. If you look at that, you can see that indeed the first one is good. To quickly recap, Istio Security Analyzer is a security focused tool. It does only security, not about misconfiguration that makes things doesn't work. That is not its focus. And currently, we are planning to have more checks that implement more checks that is listed in the security best practice in the Istio documentation. We are also can have more forward thinking, like give you a report of a specific workload. What are the security relevant information? Are all ports traffic captured? Is that use a default service account? All these things are possible, but we just need the feedback and your suggestions on where we should go. That's why we are very welcome the feedback and the contribution. And please don't hesitate to reach out on TetraLab/Istio-Security Analyzer. And that's all for today's presentation. Thank you.